Hey, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. Everyone's alright. Okay, for this tutorial, this is a follow-up from the last one which I did, which was PySpark. So building an application, a Spark application using PySpark, using functional programming and object-oriented programming. So to begin, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to do a quick cleanup and yeah, just remove some of the nesting, just sort of like clean up a little bit of the logic, and I'm also going to do away with printing to the screen, and I'll create some logs, so or let's say my version of logs in the temporary folder. But before I start, I just want to say, if you're from India, big up to India. A lot of my audience are from India. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're safe during this period of COVID. I've been watching the news and it doesn't look very good out there. So good health to everyone. And also, yeah, big shout out to the US. So I get a lot of audience from the US. Also France. Big up to France, and also big up to Brazil. So thank you very much for tuning in, checking out what I'm doing. Yeah, love it. It's all good. All right, so let's start then, shall we? So I'm just going to do the usual and get a terminal open, and just create some tabs and enlarge this. Okay, I think that looks good. That might be too large, I think. But that should be okay, I think. Let's just resize that a little bit. Yeah, I think that was a bit too big. Let's just go down a bit. Yeah, I think that's all right. Okay. And for the other one, and for the other tab as well. Okay, that looks good. I think you guys can see that now. Alright, so let's go into the tutorial folder, and I'll just drop in PySpark, and I'll just open that up in Vim. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to go to jobs, and I am going to make that a little bit more. I am going to just clean this up. So where I've got open file, let's say for example I've got another job. I create another job in jobs and I call that Twitter, right? And I'm doing some Twitter stuff. Then instead of rewriting these functions, I might as well just put that in the class and just reuse that, because I'm just opening up a JSON file. So that's what I'll do. I'll just replace that. So I'm going to take this whole thing, and I'm just going to copy it, and I'm going to put it in classes. So in classes, I'll just put that beneath the Spark start method. Okay, just move that over, and I think I might be someone with OCD, because I'm very meticulous on organization, on how my code looks, and if I've got two spaces or one space in between methods, like here for example, right there, I've got two spaces, and I always have to have it uniform. So I don't know, there must be something about me, and I do have some kind of instances of OCD where I'm a little bit compulsive and stuff. Alright, so what we need to do, we need to put in self, because it's now in a class. And I'm just going to head over to jobs, and in jobs I will just rename this function. So I'm going to call that openConfig, so a little bit more specific about what we're doing here. And then because I'm calling it over here, I need to just change that function name. Alright, so I can remove all of this and then just call the function. So I'm just going to say if instance file path is a string and os.path.exists, so if the file exists, file path. So just by putting in these clauses, we're just tightening things up a bit. Oh, I think my indenting is a bit off there. Okay. Right, so we're going to return class PySpark class, because we're going to get it from our class. Config equals empty dictionary. I really don't need to be doing this. I could have just kept that as something empty, but I'm doing it just in case I need to later pass something through. It's probably better if I don't put anything in there, but I will. I'll just leave it for the moment. All right. Open JSON file path. Okay, so that's my argument, which I'm passing to OpenJSON, which is the method which I've just put into class. All right, so let's just give that a quick. And I'll just put this tab over here. So here's my OCD kicking in. I need to have it over here on the left. All right, so let's run that, shall we? So just copy that. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to keep on running it as I make changes to make sure that it's running okay and there's no errors. So there is an error. So it's saying Spark class object has no attribute OpenJSON. Okay. Let's just go back to classes. Okay, it's called open file. So let's get rid of that. Don't need to have that in there. And we just say OpenJSON. Okay. And correct the indenting. Alright, let's run that again. Takes two positional arguments, takes two arguments, one was given. Oh, sorry, I need to put in the self. And run that. So as I'm making these changes, I'll just keep on running the code, because this is just really cleaning things up a bit. And so I don't want to make a whole load of changes and then run it and there's an error, and that error is not really obvious, like where it is, and I spend a little bit too much time trying to sort of like resolve that. But usually it's totally fine. You can just quickly read the error messages and it will just tell you where it is, where you have to look. So alright, so that's cool. So I've just moved that out of the way, and I can now reuse that in another class. So let's just go back over to jobs, and there's a few more things that I think I'll do. So I'm going to stop nesting. So nesting functions is not really a good idea. I mean, you can do it. I mean, as I'm doing it here, so I've got clean transformations inside transform dataframe. So I'm doing it here. You can do it on mostly all languages, but it just makes things a little bit more kind of less efficient sometimes. I mean, it's nicer to write functions and then just being able to call other functions without having nesting. There are reasons for nesting, but I mean, I think in this instance, I think it serves its perfect purpose to nest this inside transform.df, but I'm going to get away from nesting. So I'm going to correct that, and I'm just going to move that out. So let's take this out. Take both of them. Well, okay, let's just do the first one. So, or shall I? Okay, let's do all of them. Take them all out, and I will put them here. Okay. So I'm going to call on transform.df, and then with transform.df, I'm then going to call on my functions outside. So let's get that working in the right way. Alright, so I'm going to call this tdf, and I'll call this cdf. And I'm just going to give this a different description here. I'll just say transform data. So if I go back up here, and I'll just say transform data. All right, so okay, that's absolutely fine. So that should just work, to be honest. So if I run that, let's see if that works. Okay, that works. So that's a good example of why it's good to be very explicit with what you put inside of a function. So you can easily just remove a function and put it somewhere else because you're being very explicit about the inputs and outputs. And then also, by avoiding nesting, then things are even more easier to move around. Okay, so I think that cleans up jobs. And then let's go over to classes, and I'll just do a bit of cleaning up over here as well. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to remove get unique file extensions, which is callable. So get unique file extensions are, sorry, this is a function which is just inside the same method as open directory. And what I've done, I've called that, I'm passing that function into open directory as something which is a callable function. And I don't really need to do that. The only reason why I was doing that is because I was just being really explicit about what I'm passing into functions, what I'll be using. But I don't really need to do that. I mean, open directory is just going to sit inside this method, so it can easily be called without having to pass that function. So I will just put that, I'll just remove it here and here. Okay, so let's run that. Okay, everything should be fine. All right, okay. Now, let me just show you what I was calling in as a function. So I've got open file, right? And if I go over to open file, I am bringing in a function, right, which is get file extension, which is callable. So that I need to keep in there because I'm calling on that outside of this method. So here is get file extension. So for that particular one, I do need to make that as callable, and you can see the code, as you remember, just here. So this is where I'm initiating Spark class, and I'm calling on this method and making that a callable function. So that one can stay in there, but the other one I can just get rid of. All right, what else am I going to do? So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to clean up some logic here. So where I've got filter files, I've got this logic which is sitting outside this function, and I'm going to try and move most of my logic inside of functions rather than outside. So what I can do, what I'm saying here is, if pattern is none, so if there's no pattern to filter files on, it's none, then I'm just going to return file list. But if there is, if the clause is now saying if it isn't none, then it's going to be a string. If it's not none, then I want to actually filter the file list based on what that string is. So what I could do, I can just bring that inside of this function, really. So I can say if is instance pattern string, then I want to return the filter. Else I can just return file list. Okay, so that's a lot cleaner. So now I can get rid of this logic. Just makes things a lot. Oops, sorry, I just forgot to put the return on there. It just makes it a lot easier to read. Yeah, when you're writing code, you might do stuff, and you'll come back to the code and you'll say, okay, how can I clean this up? How can I make this a lot better? But that's now truly more efficient. All right, so let's give that a test to make sure that's working. Okay, that now works. Alright, so okay, so over here I've got create data frame. Now again, I've got this logic which is we can kind of clean that up a bit. We can put that into its own function, to be honest. So let's say def make data frame, and we'll just move that up there, and yeah, we'll just move that up there, and we'll call on this function. So we need to pass in something which is file list, file type. That's going to be a string, and that's going to be a list, and we're going to return a data frame. So the rest of this logic is just saying if the file type is CSV, then we'll return, if the file type is CSV, then we'll call in this function df from CSV, and if not, then if it's a JSON, then we'll call on the function JSON, and then if it's neither of those two, then it'll be none. So we can expand upon that we can write that in a different, we can improve upon that function later as we introduce different formats which we want to produce, different data frames from different files. So if we're reading in different file types, then we can expand upon that logic to create a data frame. Alright, so we need to call on that function, so it will be, just grab it from here. So return, and just get rid of this, get rid of that. Okay, so that's a little bit cleaner. So if we just scroll up a little bit, yeah, that's just a nicer, that code just looks a little better. And let's just run that to make sure that's working. Okay, so that works. Now, let me just go back over to jobs. So what I want to do, I just want to introduce a new function over here. So I want to replace showMySchema. So I want to start. I want to stop printing to the screen. I just want to completely get rid of printing anything to the screen. And I'm just going to go over to classes quickly, and I'm just going to comment out this stuff here. Now this was just really to help us along to make sure that everything is working so we can kind of see some output. But I can switch that off. So let's go over to Spark Start, and we can just comment out those print statements. So that's just my way of understanding what's going on. I mean, it's really a bad idea if you're working in a company, if you're producing work in a team or for someone, then you don't want to put any print statements in your code whatsoever. So I'm going to move away from that, completely move away from printing to the screen. I'll only do it if I need to show something, but I'll get rid of it and I'll adopt a different style of validating my output. Alright, so let's go over to jobs again, and I'm just going to replace this showSchema stuff over here. And what I want to do, I just want to start printing out the schema to a file in my temporary folder rather than to the screen. So for that, what I can do, I can just go back to classes for a sec, and let's create a class. So I'll call that def debug data frame. And let's just test getting stuff over to this. So I need to add self to it, and then it's going to be, I'm going to pass a data frame, so df data frame, and then a file name, because I want to pass a data frame and I'm going to print it to a file, print the schema, data frame schema to a file. So I need to pass in a file name, and then I'm not going to return anything because I'm just going to print to a file. So we'll just print the file name. So here's an example of me just sort of temporarily printing to the screen. And yeah, okay, we'll do that. So let's just create the class for it. the place where we initiate the class in our jobs file. So let's go over to showSchema, and what I want to do, I want to pass in the file name. So we'll have file name string, and we can get rid of this. And I'm just going to go over here and copy one of these. Okay. And I'll just put this down here. So I'm not going to return anything. So I call that new method debug df. Okay. And I'm going to pass in the data frame and the file path. Okay. And so the file name, so I'm now going over to transform df, so I'm going to call on that over here, so showMySchema, right? So let's try one to begin with. So tdf, which is this one, so this argument tdf, and then we're going to call that, give that a file name. So if I call that transactions df, okay, and I'll just do the other two as well. So we just call it these file names, and yeah, I'll call that cdf and pdf. Okay, so I don't have one for products just yet, but I will put that in there. Okay. Right, so the first one we're going to test transactions. So right, so we're passing TDF to showMySchema, we're capturing the data frame, we're capturing the file name, right? So hence I haven't said file path, I just said file name. Alright, so let's just test that and see if we print the file name. Okay, data frame is not defined because that should be capital. And where was that? That was on the class. Okay, so just go over to that. And correct it. And we should see the file name output. Okay, file name none. Oh, okay. So the none is something which I'm printing, which is here. Okay. So I'll get rid of that at some point as well. File path is not defined, so it wasn't file path. File name, jobs. Oh, sorry, jobs. So I called it file path somewhere. Okay, just here. So yeah, that should be a file name. And I'm calling it file name because I'm just giving it a name, not a path. These little sort of namings in variables kind of help. So if you are really logical and name things appropriately, then it kind of helps you when you forget about your code, then come back to your code and you're trying to think about what you did a long time ago. Alright, that's working. Just out of interest, let me just go back up there. So I am passing products PDF, okay. I won't put products PDF in it just now because I don't want to slow it down too much. Alright, so what do I want to do now? Okay, so I want to, everything's fine with jobs, so I can completely come out of jobs now, and I can go back to the classes, and this is where I'm going to do all of my code. So I can get rid of this. Now the first thing I want to do, I want to create a file path, so I'll call this create file path, and I'm just going to do everything functional. So everything I want to do, absolutely everything, is going to be inside of a function, and I will call that file name, and that's a string, and I'm going to return a string, and that will be an f string because I'm going to put a variable in it, which is file name, and the file type is going to be JSON, and then where I'm going to send that to is going to be my temp folder, and I'll call that Spark. So I have a folder called Spark in my temp folder. That's going to be my full file path, and I'll call on that function. Just copy that actually and get rid of this. Okay, so that's the file path which I'm going to create. And just before I do that, I need to put something in here for the directory. So instead of spelling it out here, let's just create another variable. So I'm going to go up to my init, and I'm going to say self.debug directory equals this folder temp spark. So it's just a lot easier if I do it that way, so I don't need to keep writing out what the debug directory is going to be. It's always going to be tmp spark, and I can just change it in one place. Okay, I think that's a lot better. And let's just do a self.debug directory. Now, do I need to do this? Not really. I don't need to put it into another variable. I can just leave it in self. But I will. I don't need to do that, but I will. Okay, so let's pass in debug directory, and we'll pass in debug directory, and that's going to be a string, and then we can just replace this with debug directory. Well, let's just call that directory actually. Okay, cleaner. Alright, so we've got our directory. Now, what I need to do, I need to create that directory. So let's put in a function first to create that directory. So I'll call that make directory, and it's going to be directory, and we'll say if is instance we'll say if os.path exists directory but it will be not. If it doesn't exist, then we'll make the directory. So the command for that will be just a .os make directories directory. And what that does, that makes this command makes subdirectories. So instead of just if you're passing in a string, directory string, which has directories within directories, then it will create those child directories. All right, so let's call on that first. So make directory debug directory. Actually, I think I will save lines of code here and just put that in there. Okay, so let's just give that a quick try. And we'll come over here, run our code. Alright, so I'm going to go over to my temp and let's see if that folder was created. So there it is, Spark. So that's the folder we just created, 943. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to do a Control D, and by doing a Control D, I can just go straight into my temp folder. So that just makes it easier, so I can just quickly access that. Alright, so now what that does, I won't have any problems with that directory not being there. If it's once it's deleted, it will just continue creating that. And if I just take a look at this, we might see some other Spark stuff in here. So what I'll do, I'll just run Spark again. And I'll just go over to my temp, and you should see some Spark folders being temporarily created. So Spark also creates temp folders, which it then gets rid of once it completes the job. So it's a good place. The temp directory is a good place to do all the stuff that you need. Alright, so yeah, I don't need to hang on to that. Alright, so the next thing I want to do is I want to create a string. So I want to create a string out of the data frame. So I'll call that df to string. Sorry, when I say create a string out of the data frame, I want to create a string out of the schema. So when you do a print schema, which you normally print to the screen, I want to convert that into a string, which I'm then going to save to a file or write to a file. So that's a really simple command, which will be, oh, and before I do that, I need to pass in the data frame. And I forgot to say what I'm returning here, so that's going to be a string, and that's going to be none. Okay, so the command for that data frame will be df underscore jdf schema tree string. Okay, so that's what I want to return. I'm going to pass in the data frame, and I want to convert that to a schema, a string schema. All right, and I need to call that function. And I'll call that count is df count, and then for the schema it's going to be df schema, but I want that to be JSON. Now, what I want to do, I want to wrap this in, I need to create that to a string. So I'll do a JSON dumps. Oh, sorry, not dumps, loads. Okay. And then also up here, I need to pass in the data frame. So df data frame, and then I also need a just a data frame. And that will be a dictionary, which I then return. So return content. But instead of doing that, what I could do is just return the JSON dumps. So string convert to JSON, place the JSON inside of this key called schema, then convert this entire dictionary into a string. So yeah. So JSON dumps, and that'll be content. Now, what I want to do, I want to format this in a nice way, right? So I don't want to just have one line, all on one line. I want to create a nested format, so it's easy to read. So I'm not going to sort my keys. So I'll say sort keys equal false. Then I want to indent it by 4. So typically, as we would have 4 tabs, or sorry, 4 spaces or a tab, I want to have that style of indenting on my nesting of my JSON or dictionary JSON. And then default equals string. So that just gets rid of any errors. All right. So when I say errors, like let's say for example you had a object within you were passing through an object, right? And then you were to get an error saying this object is you cannot print that object, because it's an object. So what you're saying, you're forcing everything to be a string. Okay. And then what I want to do, I want to create the file. So let's say def create file, and we need to pass in a file path, which is going to be a string, and we want to pass in the content. Now what I'll do, I'm just going to say any on the content, and And before I do that, let's just go to the top, because I'll need to pass in, I'll need to import any, and any is a part of the typing library, so that will avoid that error. And just go back over here, and I'm not going to return anything. And I'll say with open, and what I'm going to do with open, I'll initiate a new file. Oh, sorry, and it's going to be append as out dot write okay, so let's do this as a string instead of out. Let's just be a little bit more kind of understandable. So I'll just say f as in file, and then that's going to be an f string. So I'm going to pass in the content, and yeah, I think that should be okay. Okay, I just say content actually, and then f close. And I don't think I really need to put the close on there, because I think when you do things with, it just automatically closes it. But I'll leave that in there for the moment anyway. Alright, so let's initiate a function. And so I can get rid of this, and I can get rid of this. Okay. Now I'm sure there's going to be errors, but let's give it a try. So the aim is that what I want to do, I want to get the log being created in this Spark folder, or log JSON file, schema, what have you, right? And there's definitely going to be an error in here, so I need to put a colon on the end of this line. And remove that colon from there. And what is it saying here? So invalid string. So I think down here somewhere I need to remove dataframe, because I had copied it from my function. Okay, I thought there'd be more errors than that. I want to get rid of that none as well. Don't know where I'm printing that, so I want to completely get rid of everything that I'm printing to the terminal. Alright, so let's go over to temp, Spark, and here it is. So let's just open that file up, and okay, that's not what I expected. So let's take a look at why it's printing out like that. Something with the content. All right, let me just try something else here. So try something else. Let's do it this way. Alright, let's take a look at some of this up here. Did I write this correctly? So df._jdf.schema tree string Okay, it's a bit weird. Okay, let's give that another shot here. Alright, so I think that would have appended anyway, so let's have a look at that. Okay, it's appended it. And I'm just going to put another function in here, so I am going to put a function in which is remove file. And that would be file path. And that will be if os.path.exists file path then os remove file path. Okay. But there's still something I'm doing wrong here. There is definitely something which I'm doing wrong. So, alright, so let's put that function in there. So let's just break this down. Sorry, I can see the mistake that I made. I wasn't calling on this function. Oh, okay. Alright, so let's create one for products. So I'm not doing any cleaning on products, so I can just, yeah, okay. Just undo that. I can just copy this. Oh, there you go. Alright, take that space out if you like. Alright, so that just makes everything cleaner. And yeah, let's give that a try. Alright, so we've got the products one and the transactions one, but I don't seem to have the customers one. So let's take a look at that. No error messages. And I'm still doing some printing, so let's completely get rid of the printing. So let's just go over here. See if there's any print statements here. Let's go over to my class. Print statements can be a pain. no print statements. But why is that not being created in here? So I've got my transactions. I've got my products, but I don't have my customer. Okay, let's just try and trace that, see why that is. Okay, so I'm not returning clean customer, and that's why. And I'm still doing a print schema. So instead of doing a print schema, I want to return it. Okay, and I think that should solve that problem. So let's go over to our temp. Okay, so there we go. We've now got the customer data frame. So there's the schema for it. So that has 137 rows. So yeah, that's what I wanted to do. Before I proceed any further with what I'm going to show you. So the next thing I'll show you will be what will I show you? So yeah, I'll show you a join. I mean, I've shown you a join, how to do a join before, but I'm going to create a function for that in jobs to join those tables and do a little bit of aggregation. That's something I'll do really, really quickly. And then also we'll do some exporting of file types, and then we'll probably create some tests. So I might create another long tutorial. So I'm just going to do this tutorial today, this part of the tutorial today, what I've just shown you, and then I might add that to a bigger file, video file, where I show you all the other stuff I just mentioned. I don't think I'll split it up into individual bits. So I just wanted to do this bit where I just clean up the file and clean up the application before I upload it to GitHub. So yeah, alright, thanks guys, and I shall be back and create another tutorial to continue. Alright, thanks a lot, bye. Hello. Okay, so I've just got this GitHub page up. So this is where I've put the code. Right, so I haven't put a README file in there just yet, but I will. And in the README file, I'll include some sort of quick, get you sort of started instructions on there. So what script you need to run, which is going to be the sales one, which is in jobs. So everything that you do which is bespoke is going to go into this folder, jobs, and right now we have the sales script in there. And then yeah, everything is in here. So okay, that's just a little bit slow there. So okay, so everything is in this repository, and you know, I've got the test data in there as well. So you know, everything that you need is in there. And then I've also included a folder for tests. I haven't run through tests just yet, but that's something which I'm going to do just a little bit later. And then we've got the classes in classes, and I've also included notes. So the notes is just really the timeline which I've included on YouTube. And if you need sort of help in any area, then you can just click on this, and then you know exactly, you've got the link, and then you can just go exactly to which part you need. So that's the structure. Everything is in there. I will be updating this. I'll be doing continuous updates. So the good thing about putting it into GitHub is that you now can see what changes I've made. So you'll see sort of versioning history in here. Yeah, so I just wanted to show you that. And in this session, I'm going to continue to make some changes, just to make some improvements to the code. And by the way, what I've done, I've changed the folder to Python PySpark Framework, and that's the same name that I've given it in GitHub, as you just saw. All right, so let's start. So I'm just going to throw this folder in here. And the first thing I want to do, I just want to make some further improvements to the class script. And I thought I'd wrap things up in the other tutorial. I mean, the other tutorial is going to be the same tutorial, because I'm just going to join the videos together, right? So make one of them, which is going to be like the part 2, which you're currently watching right now. And so yeah, that's what I'm going to do. And yeah, I'm just coming back to make some further improvements. So I thought I'd wrap things up previously, but obviously I haven't wrapped things up, but now I will. So, and this might take a little bit longer, because I come back to my code and I look at things and I say to myself, how can I do that better? Oh, I shouldn't have done it that way. I need to improve it. And I'm continuously thinking like that. And the best thing to do is for me to do all of that stuff, all of those improvements as early as possible. Because if you're following along with this tutorial, then it's going to be a little bit difficult, because if I've made changes and I don't show you those changes that I've made, then you're going to jump forward and you're going to think, okay, this has changed, this is not what you showed me. So that's why I find it important to spend this amount of time by making those improvements early on, and documenting those improvements. And I thought it was important to document it, make a video for it, because that way you can always refer back to it and jump to it. Alright, so right, now where I'm going to make improvements is this bit here in the import data. So I'm going to get rid of this line, so I'm going to stop writing logic outside of functions, and I'm just going to write everything as much as possible inside a function. So that's why I'm going to make an improvement to the import data part in the class. And it's going to be similar to what I did down here, like this directory where I had and yeah, I just need to improve this bit here. So what I did, and I made a note of that in my current tutorial, which is the beginning part of this same tutorial, where I didn't include this bit, so let me put that in there. Okay. Alright, so yeah, as I was saying, so yeah, I made improvements to this bit here. I took out all of the logic that was outside of functions, and I put them inside functions, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to put everything inside functions. Alright, so I'm going to do the same thing to import data. So alright, so to begin with, alright, let's take these out. So what have I got here? I've got if path is directory, and if path type is file, then I'm going to do stuff, right? I'm going to run those functions. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put all of this, let's just grab this, and I'm going to put all of this over here. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to grab this bit here, this function here, which is open directory, and I don't need that. So actually, let me just going to get rid of this. Just take another look at that. Just take another look at that for a sec. So, where am I? Down here. Okay. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do, I am going to just, let's say, comment this out. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to run this command here, file or directory. And I'm going to do a return on this function, file or directory, and then file or directory is going to do everything else. So within file and directory, what I need to do, I need to pass in Spark session, and I also need to pass in pattern as well. And then if the path type is directory, I think I've got that already up here. So if it's a directory, I'm going to do this. If it's a file, I'm going to do this. So instead of returning directory or file, I just need to just go straight to the function. You know, that's all I really need to do, right? So let's take a look. Now the first one. So the first one will be open directory. So we can just copy that and put it over here. And then the next one is going to be open file. No, I'll just grab that like that. It's a bit of a long line. Okay, here we go. Grab the whole thing. I'm just being lazy by doing it that way. Alright, so let's go back up here and return file. I've got Spark class. Okay, now the other thing I'm going to do, I don't really need to pass that get file extension as a function into open file. I really don't need to do that because over here I can just call that function anyway, so I don't really need to pass it in there. I was just being really literal to begin with, and I was showing you how to pass functions. So that's another one which I can remove. And so I'm going to remove that, and I'm just going to make things a lot more, just makes things a lot more easy to read, right? Instead of being cryptic, you know, where is this function coming from? Where is that coming from? All that sort of stuff. I'm just going to make it a little bit more easier to read. Alright, so if I just get rid of that, and then all I need to do is pass Spark and the data file. Okay. Alright, so I think that's okay. And over here, I can now get rid of this. So I've got open file, so that's going down here to open file. Now, all I need to do is just put that function, just grab that again. Just take that function and put it over here. Okay, so that's going to be file path. Oh, sorry. There. So Spark class self config get file extension data path. Sorry, file path. Okay. Get rid of that. And I'll just leave that in there for the moment. And let's run this. So we'll run jobs. And make sure that's okay. So let's take a look at our temp folder, and we'll just make sure that that's being run okay. And that logs. Okay, we do have an error, so file directory. So what's the error saying? It's saying file directory takes one positional argument, but 3 were given. So file or directory, I need to pass in Spark, and what was the other one? Pattern. Okay, so that is a Spark session, and just copy this over here. I'm going to run that again. I'm just looking for the Spark folder to appear if running it is successful. Okay, still another issue here. So what was it? What was it? Open file. So open file, 1 positional argument, but 2 are given. So open file. I don't need to pass in Spark. Okay, so that's okay, I believe, and we've got customer DF, products DF, and transactions DF. So that's fine. Alright, so that cleans that up a little bit. So yeah, I really didn't need to do it as I did it before. I can just make things a lot more simpler and functional. Okay, so the next thing I want to do, I just want to do a little bit more cleaning up again on jobs. So let's go to jobs. And I want to just clean this up a bit here. So where we've got showMySchema, I'm going to take it out of transform data and I'm just going to put it into its own function. So where I've got, for example, clean transformations, I think it can really go in there. So let's just take that out. So we'll take that out and put it there. And we can do the same thing for customers. And we can, let's also do one for products as well. So let's create one for products. Now for products, I'm not actually doing any cleaning, but I'm just going to be consistent. Should I want to clean it, for example? I don't need to, but this is where I'm actually going to do the debugging. So if I say clean products, and then with clean products, it's just going to be, oops, go back up here. It's just going to be this. And do some renaming here, so call that df, and I'll just call that products. Just call that customers. And that'll be df1, and this will be df2, call that transactions. And then I can just get rid of that, and I can get rid of that, and create one for client customers. Products. Alright, so that's a little bit cleaner. Just make sure that's fine. That's fine. Right, let's get rid of this folder and we'll start that again. Now that's the beauty of putting things into your temp folder. So as you debug, you just like throw stuff away really. Okay, make sure this is running fine. Okay, customers, products, transactions. Okay, that's good. Alright, so there's another bit that I'm going to do here, and alright, so there's another bit that I'm going to do here, and what I'm going to do, I am going to make some modifications to the debug method that I created in classes. Now the reason for that is because I'm just going to make it reusable. So I'm not just going to use it for debugging data frames, I'm going to use it for debugging other things as well. But before I do that, I'll show you what I'm going to newly introduce. Right, so I am going to introduce some SQL, because what we're doing over here, we are just cleaning, we're just cleaning the data, right? So we've got clean transformations, clean customers, clean products. We still have 3 separate data frames, and then what we want to do is join those data frames. So the first thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to create an SQL way of joining. Now I've got a folder over here called SQL, and I'm going to put some scripts inside of here. And then that's the first way in which I'm going to do it, because this is going to be a framework. It's going to give you options to, just do work on pure data frames, work on RDDs, and then also work on SQL. So SQL is pretty popular, so we want to introduce that, and I'm going to work on that one first. And to do SQL, we need to create a function where we can receive our SQL, and I'm going to call that create temp tables. Excuse me for a sec. Okay, so I'm back, And where was I? So create temp tables, right? So what I'm going to do, what we need to do, we need to create some temporary tables for SQL. And this is a function which I'm now going to write. So within this function, we need to call in Spark session. And I am going to, what am I going to do? Right, actually, let's just leave that for a sec. No, okay, we'll put that. No, I'm going to leave it out for a sec. Right. Put a parse in there. So let's go back up to here. So let's send all our data frames to this particular function, which is the create temp tables. So right, so we will send all of that data. So let's just copy create temp tables and we will send some data frames. Send them all as data frames. Alright, so we can get rid of this. And I will actually include the Spark session. So let's go back down to here. And we can say df1, df2, df3. So that's to save typing out transactions, customers, products, because we know what the positioning is. I mean, we could do that just to be literal and make it more understandable, but for the moment I'm just going to do it like this. Alright, so let's print some of this out. So for the first one, we'll just print out df1. Okay, I think that looks okay. Okay, a little bit of an error there. So what is that error? Okay, let's see what that error was. So line 82. Line 82, this one. create some tables. df3 is missing. I'm sure I put it in there, so create some tables. Oh, okay, all right. We're missing the Spark session. Alright, so that's come through. That is the transactions table, I think. Yeah, it is. So now the next thing I want to do, I want to create a class. So I'm going to create a class to create temp tables. I could just, the code to create a temp table is pretty much going to be this, right? So let's create the temp table. It will be, let's set, for example, df1 create or replace. And then what we need to do, we need to give it a name. So that name will be transactions. And then to find out what the to validate that we've created the transactions table, we then do a Spark dot catalog dot list tables. Okay, that's all we need to do. So let's run that. Okay, a little bit of error in there, so what was that error again? Dataframe object has no attribute create or replace. Oh, sorry. That should be create or replace temp table. Sorry, view. There we go. Create or replace temp view. Spark session has no attribute catalog. Okay. Sorry, that's the UK spelling, so catalog. It should be the American spelling. Okay, so there we go. So And I think I need to actually print that out. So here we're seeing the data frame, but we're not seeing the catalog. So let's print that out. Or the catalog of tables. And try that once more. Okay, so here it is. So we've now created a temp table. It's called transactions. It's not attributed to the database. We've given it no description. The table type is temporary. Then you've got is temporary true. So this is a list where it returns, and we can do some stuff with that list. So let's expand upon this a little bit. So here I've got df1, df2, df3. Now I need to pass into this function, a list of tables. If I've got more tables, right, then I have to expand upon these arguments, and I have to say df4, df5, etc., etc. Then when I get over to this bit, to create the temp table, I need to say, right, I'm going to call that transactions. I'm call the next one products. I need to call the next one, so forth, so forth, so forth. So it's a lot of manual sort of work. So I can kind of make this a little bit more efficient, do this a little bit differently. And I think what I can do, instead of passing all of this as individual data frames, then what I can do, I can just pass a list. So I can call that list of df, right? And that's going to be a list. So that's more efficient if I just pass a list. So we'll just comment these out for a sec. And we'll print out list of df. And then over here, just go back down to here again. So remember, what I need to do, I need to pass in a data frame, and I need to pass in a label, a textual label, which I'm going to name that temporary table. So the best way to do that is do it in a list. But when I do it in a list, I am going to also put each value, into a tuple. So let's start off by enclosing that in a list. So that's my list, right? So that list has 3 items, it has 3 data frames. But what I want to pass in, I also want to pass in the textual label. So the best way for me to do that, I believe, is to send each data frame as a tuple, and in that tuple I'll have 2 values. I have index 0 and index 1. So the size or the shape of it is going to be 2. And so that's my first tuple, and I'll just put in transactions. And then my second tuple, I just need to enclose that. And I'll call that customers. And then my third tuple, close that as well, will be products. Okay. Now that just makes it a lot more easier. So I'm passing in a list, and in that list it's going to have a set of tuples. Just make sure that looks okay. Alright. Now what I can do, I can just validate that's coming through okay. So I'll just run that again. Okay, so there you go. I'm now passing in a list of tuples. So here I've got first tuple, that's my data frame, and then I've got my name for it. And that's going to be easier to work with. Alright, so now what I want to do, instead of creating the table here, instead of creating the table here, the temporary table here, I want to create a class for this because it just makes it reusable, right? So if I create another job script, then I want to be able just to reuse that code. I don't want to manually write out the code all the time. So let's pass this data over to a new class. So let's go over to class and rewrite that class. So go down here. What have I got here? I've got the debug here. So just above the debug, create data frame. I'll write a new method and I'll call that create temp tables, and that's going to contain self, and I'll pass in a list. So list of df, right? And that's going to be a list. And over here, I'll have the print statement. Sorry, I'm going all over the place again. These keys, too close together. I've kind of mastered it now, to be honest. I don't jump around the place as much as I used to. Alright, so let's do that. And we'll just go over to jobs, and instead of printing that out here, we are now going to just pass that through to our class. And just for ease, I'll get this one over here. So I'll grab that portion where I'm sending data to a class previously, and I'll just copy that there. Okay. Get rid of self and get rid of that type. Okay. Alright, so let's run that, make sure that's going through okay. And we should see that print if there's no errors. I always keep on running the code just so that I can it's just easier to write a bit of code and then run it, so you just know that you're not making errors. You're fixing your errors as you go along. Right, so that's okay. That's now being sent to our class. So what I can do when I receive that, I can receive that data to the class as a list, and then start doing. I can pass through that list, right? So typically, the way you would pass through that list, if I just go back over to classes. You can write a for loop, right? So I can now say for item in list of df, right? You get the picture, and then I can print out each element or do stuff, right? But we're not going to do it that way. We're going to be functional, and we're going to use list comprehension, and we're going to use lambdas, right? So if you're not using list comprehension and you're not using lambda functions, then this is a great way to start. And I pretty much prefer to use lambdas and list comprehension because it just makes things so much more easier to read and to work with. And once you start doing that way, you are going to love lists in Python. Alright, so what I'm going to do, because I'm going to use list comprehension, then I need to capture what I'm going to send to it, and it's no longer going to be a list, it's going to be a tuple. So I'll call that tuple df, and it will be a tuple. And we can print that out. So tuple df. Oh, sorry, just that. Alright, so that's what I'm going to send to create temp tables. If I go back over to jobs, then I don't need to do this bit here. So we're going to retype this out. Alright, so I need to capture it into something. So I'm just going to say, what am I going to say? I'm going to say T for temp table, right? I could call it anything, right? And then open and close list. And I'll start off with a, well, I'll break this down the right way. So as I had shown you, we can structure a for loop. It's still going to have a for loop, but we're doing everything within a list. So typically, within a list, you'll start off with a list saying, okay, I'll open up my list. You have your for x in blah, then t dot append x, right? We're not going to do it that way, so we're going to do it all in one line, and that's what this comprehension does. And what this comprehension does, it iterates through a list, creating a new list. And rather than appending, changing that list, what you're doing, you are creating a list as you iterate through it. So this is the whole idea of functional programming and immutability. And the benefit of immutability rather than mutability is that it's better on threads. So you don't have changing data. If something else is using that data somewhere along the line, then that data is not being changed. Its state is the same, right? The only thing that you're changing is inside of a function where you're putting an input and you're sending out an output. Lists and dictionaries do struggle with that because they are immutable, and unlike other languages, then it is in memory, and when you make a change to a list or a dictionary, it is making a change to that memory, to a location of that memory. So with list comprehension, you're not making changes to the list with append. What you're doing, you are creating a new list. You're iterating through the values and creating a new list. Alright, so I hope that explains that. So in here, I'm going to say for x in list of df, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to use a lambda function. So the lambda function, I need to put that in brackets, so lambda x, so I'm now iterating through x. X is being caught over here, which is x, and then I have a colon, and then I'm going to run my class method, and where I have list of df, I have list of df over here. So I'm now iterating through list of df as x, and so x is what I'm now going to send to the function or the method, class method, and that's where the tuple is going to be caught in the class method. Alright. And we also have x over here. Alright, so let's give that a try. and see if that works okay. And if there's no problems with it. Okay, so as you can see here, that's being captured, that's being caught by my class method, and it's iterating through each of those, sorry, the list comprehension had iterated through each of those values, and now I can capture that in my, and now it's being caught inside my class method. And let's just put a space in there as well. So where are we? Go to the classes. Just put another one up there, just so that you can really see that properly. So let's clear that. Okay, there you go. So just put a bit of spacing in there. So as you can see it, these are the tuples that I'm now capturing. And so that makes it a lot more easier by putting it into a list, putting it into a function, and then putting it into a class method. The class method is reusable anywhere in any job. By putting it into a function, I can just, I've got an input, I've got an output, and then by putting it into a list, I can just iterate through it. I don't have to type things manually. Alright, so I can get rid of that now. Alright, so what am I going to do over here? Let's go back over to jobs. And in jobs, we can get rid of that. And, oh, sorry. We need to grab this. Oh. And we can come back over to classes, because this is what we're going to do. We're going to create our tables. So as you can see here, we've got df, data frame, create or replace, temp view transactions. Alright, so we need to pass the information out of tuple df. So the first one we know is going to be the data frame. So it's going to be tuple df, and the index, oh sorry, I'm going all over the place. The index for that data frame is going to be 0. And then the name is going to be index 1. And we can get rid of that. And we'll just put a clause in here as well. So we want to say if is instance tuple df tuple, and tuple, sorry, len tuple df equals 2, then we want to run that code. So we always want to have a shape of 2. So we've got 2 items in that tuple, shape of 2, and we just want to check for that, make sure it's a tuple, make sure it's 2, and then we can run that code, right? So we just want to be a little bit strict on that, because that's our standardization. And then what we can do, once we've done that, we can come back over to jobs, and we can then print our catalog. So we can just ensure that everything is there as it should be. So let's run that. Tuple df is not defined. I've got a capital F there, and that was in class Spark. Right, let's make that change. And here it is. And run that again. Object is not scriptable, so what are we doing here? Another mistake. Another mistake. Okay, which is here. So call that df. Sorry, mistakes everywhere. Clear that again. And run that. Okay, so it's printed out the catalog of tables. So here's a list of our tables, and what have we got? We have customers, we have products, and we have transactions. So they're all there. And yeah, so this is a collection. This is a named tuple collection, what it brings back. Alright, so what do we need to do? So just like I've got my data frames, and I'm doing some logging, if you will, so just some validation where I'm sending it to temp Spark. I want to do the same with my catalog. So every time I run the code, I just want to have some validation as to what's going on. So yeah, I mean, because you don't really want to keep on doing this all the time, right? Writing stuff to the screen. You just want to keep it nice and simple. And to be honest with you, when you print to the screen, if you print a lot of stuff to the screen, it actually slows the code down enormously. It seems a bit strange, because printing to the screen should be something simple, but Python having to communicate with the system, system out, system in, system out. It takes a long time, and printing to the screen really slows things down. So let's create a log for that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to reuse what I've done here. So where I've got the debug, and I'm debugging the data frame, I want to do the same thing for my tables. So here I've got my create data frame, and then what I do, I have my create tables, and I just want to have some consistency. Yeah, so I can use the same debug df to create JSON files for my tables. So I'm just gonna change things up a little bit here. So yeah, so I'm just gonna go over to jobs quickly. So if I go over to jobs, and instead of printing here, I can get rid of that. So I'm just going to turn this off quickly, and let's head over back to classes, and just below debug.df, I'm just going to copy this. And because I want to split this up, right? I need to call that debug create file. And then over here, I'm going to create a new function, and I'm going to call that debug tables. And so what I'm going to pass into this, I'm going to pass in self, and I'm going to pass in a table. Now that table is going to be this. So this is a tuple collection, and that's what I want to pass in. So I want to iterate. So because this is a list, what Spark does when you do well, I don't have it up on the screen, but when you do the list catalog, what it's doing, that's a function, that's a method within Spark which returns this information, and they return it in a list, which is a list of tuples, tuple collections. So what I want to do, since it's a list, I can grab that list and I can throw it back to my debug table self, my class method, and do stuff with it, right? Alright, so that's why I've specified tables. So it's just one value. That value is going to be, for example, this one, and then it's going to be this one as I iterate through it. So for the moment, let's get the information coming through. No, actually, I'm just going to continue writing. So in debug tables, I am going to I'll just set that to none, because I'm not going to return anything. Just put a parse in there for a sec. And because I'm going to reuse this debug stuff here, I'm just going to make changes to that first. So debug create file, debug.df. So debug create file, what do I need to do? I'm going to strip this down. So I want to make the directory when I create the file. The create file path, I can remove that, because if I'm going to create a file path for debug tables, or create tables, and one for dataframe, then I want to create the specifics of that file name in their own individual methods. I hope I'm not getting too confusing here. You'll see exactly what I'm doing. So that I'm going to remove. Remove file, I can keep that in there. Create content, I can remove, and then create file, I can keep. Now for debug.df, I'm not creating the directory. Remove file, I can take that out, and then create file, I can take that out. Alright, so do you see what's going on here, right? So when I create my tables and my data frames and I debug it, then I'm just going to send the information, the file name and the data and the content which is going to be a dictionary, to this debug create file, right? So I don't need to keep on repeating that. I can just, that's why I've cut it down into two. So the file path, so we've got make directory, and I can just make some changes here as well. And before I do that, I can actually change this bit. Call that content. And what I need to do, I just need to pass in content rather than a data frame, and that's going to be a dictionary. And then I also need to pass in the file name. But what I'm going to do, instead of passing in a file name, I'm just going to continue working with tuples. So over here, I'll say paths tuple. So when I pass in the file name, I'm going to pass in two values, and I'm going to put them in a tuple. So I'm going to pass in a directory, and I'm going to pass in a file name. Now the reason why I need to do it separately and put it in a tuple is because what I'm going to do, I am going to create folders. So instead of having this in Spark, I'm going to have a folder for dataframes, and I'm going to have a directory folder for my temp tables. So I'm now going to start to organize things a little bit. So what do we need to do? So over here, I need to make the directory. Just keep that blank. Put in directory. And that tuple, which I'm going to pass through, called paths, is going to have an index of 0, and that will be the directory, and we'll have a file name. So you need to create the directory before you create the file. Without the directory, the file won't be created. Instead of file name, call that file path. Be more explicit. So I can now get rid of this file path. Remove file for the file path. Create file. And when I create the file, I'm going to pass in not a data frame, it's going to be content. Alright, so make the directory, move the file, create the file. Alright, so that's a lot cleaner. So I've just got this one function that can do all of that stuff. I'll just take that little space out. They can do all of that stuff, and I'm not going to return anything. And this one over here is going to return a string. Alright, so over here I'm receiving the data frame and the file name. I'm creating the file path, and so we can just make a few changes here. So the first change I'm going to make is going to be up here. So let's just get rid of some of this. Right, just get rid of all of that to begin with, just so that I can see it properly. Alright, so I need to create the paths, and I'm going to use this function. And with that function, I'm going to pass in the directory. So the directory will be self.debug directory. So that's the directory which I'm going to pass in. And then I'm going to receive that directory up here. So directory and file name, so that remains unchanged. And then I'm going to put that into a data frame. So let's just expand upon this. So b equals, I'm going to create an f string, so I'll just grab this. And we'll call that data frame. And then I can just get rid of this bit and call that D. Alright, so yeah, okay, so that's what it's going to return. And then what I then need to do, I need to send that over to this function, which is debug create file. And let's change this up a little bit. So yeah, okay, so this is what it's going to receive, because that's now going to be a tuple. So I've got directory in index 1, and I've got the full file path in index 2. Yeah, did I say directory 1? Sorry, index 1. Or index 0. So the directory goes into index 0, and the file path, full file path, goes into index 1. Okay. And what else? What else? And actually, you know what? I can also, because it's a tuple, you can also just do this if you wanted to. Yeah, you just do that. What else? What else? What else do I need? Okay. So that is going to be the paths, call that paths, and I need to grab the content, so that would be the content, data frame, content. Okay, and I think that's good. And then obviously I need to Spark class self.config debug create file. Okay. I'll just run that just to make sure that works. So let's get rid of this folder. And run that. So I've just now made a change to my debug for the data frame, and I'm going to reuse that for debug tables. So I'm just going to validate that's still working now. And as I knew it, there's going to be a mistake. So line 176 in debug df, name consent is not defined. Okay, so that is create consent. So I can take that function and just put it straight in here as an argument, and get rid of that data frame. It's just df. Let's clear that. got some weird knocking next door. Alright, so that works fine. Let's go over to our folder. So it's created Spark, and we've got dataframes, new folder dataframes, and we've got customer DF, products, and transactions. Okay, so that works fine. So that's now reusable. So let's go over here, and I'm just going to copy this. Just copy this from here. And I'm going to pass in the same information. So let's call that temp. Well, let's just say tables. And I'm not passing in a data frame, I'm passing in a table, and let's call that table. And I'll just show you, before I actually do this, I'm just going to show you something. So let's just comment that bit out for a sec. And yeah, just copy that out. I'm just going to print something. So let's just validate what information we are passing. So let's get that function, put it out here, comment this out, and I just want to print the information which I'm sending to this. So let's print table, see what's in there, and then to print table, we'll print the table, and then we'll also print to see what attributes that table has. So what stuff is inside of it. So let's do a directory table. Actually, let's get rid of that. No, okay, leave it in there. Let's do this. Sometimes it can be a little bit hard to read, so just put that arrow in there so kind of we know where we are. But before I do that, I need to go back over to jobs, because I'm not sending a list. I'm going to create another list comprehension, and I'm going to iterate through Spark Catalog list tables. So let's replace that for list tables, and we can call that D for debug. And we are sending that to, sorry, I forgot what we're sending it to. It's going to be debug tables, yeah. Okay, and let's go back to Spark. Alright, so that list comprehension is not going to send, so we're no longer sending a list to this method. We're sending each item in that list, which is a tuple collection, named tuple, and we're just going to find out what the value, what the contents of that tuple is. So let's run that. So file name is not defined. 193. Let's see where that is. So 193. Okay, so file name is going to come from, right, let's, instead of printing it out here, the contents of that here, let's just grab that and print it outside. I can better show you. So let's just comment out these for a sec. And rerun that. I'm going to show you what value we're going to use for our file name. Alright, so here's that arrow, so you can see this better. So this is the table, so it's a tuple, as I've said many times. We've got customers, products, and we've got transactions. So the name, that's what I'm going to use for my file name. And then here we've got all the attributes to that collection, and the one which we need, because we're going to change this into a dictionary. So the one that we're going to use is going to be, just highlight that again. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? I can see it. It's going to be as dict, so it should be in here somewhere. Just can't see it. Right. Anyway, so yeah, that just gives you the gist of seeing exactly what we can do with that tuple collection. Should be in there somewhere. Can't see it. It's in there. All right. Anyway, I won't spend too much time looking for what I know I can use. So that name, in order to get the value out of the tuple, then let's put this back up here for a sec. Don't think we need to use that again. Then that file name won't be file name, it's going to be table.name. And that's what we use for our file name. And then, alright, let's get rid of that. Now, what I like to do when I'm debugging, I like to use exactly what I've shown you, being able to see what attributes are a part of something. Yeah, just a little trick. So if I'm just going to put that in there. So direct table, put that in there as a key. Directory table. Alright, so in order to convert the table to a dictionary, it will be table dot as dict. And I was trying to find that in the list of attributes, which was pretty much in this command, in this function here. So this is what I'm going to print out, or send to my file. Let's get rid of that. And that's pretty much it. So I think there shouldn't really be any problems with this. I think that should just work. So let's give that a try. And there's an error. So df is not defined, line 191. and we're not sending in a data frame, we're sending a table collection. Let's run that again. Okay, what else? What other problem do we have here? Line 153. Right, argument must be string, not table. Oh, sorry. Okay. Being a bit silly here, so that's a function that I need to pass in to that and rerun that. Oh, so it's create the table, okay, or the directory tables. And inside of this folder, we should now have the tables. So let's open one up. Here we've got customers, and yeah, this is just a description of the table. And again, instead of printing stuff to the screen, what I normally do by doing these logs, I can just put some Python functions to see exactly what I have as part of that object. And you know, if there's anything that I want to use in there, so this is what I was looking for, as dict, right? So if there's anything that I want to use in there, I can just quickly refer to this. So you know, just little trick there. And as long as I get those logs, I know everything is happening as it should. So my job is working as it should. So I've got my data frames being created and my tables being created. So now I'm no longer printing to the screen. Everything is being done in a very managed way. So yeah, that's what I wanted to show you. So I think that now concludes it. And then the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to start doing SQL joins. So yeah, I just wanted to spend some time doing a code cleanup. You know, getting the code a little bit more efficient and sorting out the debugging, you know, so that way we can move forward in a more cleaner way. All right, thank you very much, and yeah, subscribe, like, it really helps me out, and yeah, nice one, man. Cheers.